What if the biggest purchase you ever make for your child is one you make blind? No price tag, no idea what you'll actually pay, and no idea what you're getting in return. You'd never buy a house that way. You'd never buy a car that way. You wouldn't hand a contractor $100,000 and say, "We'll figure out the price later." But that's exactly how most families approach college. Somewhere between $100,000 and $380,000 for a 4-year degree, depending on where your student goes. And here's the problem. Most families don't know what their number is until after they've already applied. Sometimes until after they've already fallen in love with the school. Here's how it usually happens. You tour the campus, your kid gets that look, you know the one, the look that says, "I can see myself here." And suddenly you're not just touring a college anymore, you're imagining their life. The dorm, the friends, the football games, the graduation. So you apply. Then you wait. Weeks become months. Your kid checks their email 50 times a day. And then the acceptance arrives. Everybody celebrates. Your child is excited. You're excited. Maybe you've already told the grandparents. Maybe the school is already being added to the family group chat. And then the financial aid offer arrives. And that's when you finally find out what the school costs you. Not the advertised price, not the tuition, your price. And by then, the hardest part has already happened. You've fallen in love. Because how do you look at your child who has already pictured themselves there and say, "We can't afford this"? That's not a glitch in the process. That's the process. They let you fall in love first. Then they show you the bill. Here's where families get confused. They hear the word tuition, when the number they really need to understand is net price. Because a $65,000 school doesn't necessarily cost your family $65,000. And a $38,000 school doesn't necessarily cost your family $38,000. What matters is what remains after the free money is applied. Merit scholarships, institutional grants, endowment awards, need-based institutional aid, not loans, money you don't have to pay back. School A, $65,000, $40,000 in merit aid. Net price, $25,000. School B, $38,000, $0 in institutional aid. Net price, $38,000. The school that looked more expensive is actually cheaper. And most families never run the comparison. Not because they're irresponsible, because nobody taught them to look at college this way. Now, imagine knowing this information before your student ever applies. Not guessing, not hoping, knowing what the data says. We've built a database covering colleges across the country, 4-year public and private institutions, so families can compare the things that actually matter. How much does the college award in merit aid to incoming freshmen? How much institutional need-based aid do they give? What are the SAT and ACT ranges? Where does your student fall within that academic profile? Is your student an average student at that school, above average, or potentially one of the students the college is actively trying to attract? Because that's where this gets interesting. Think about it from the college's perspective. Who do colleges compete for? The students they want. The students who make their incoming class stronger. The students who improve their academic profile. The students who bring something the college needs. Those are the students who get the attention. And they're not just competing for admission. They're competing for those students with money and opportunity. Merit scholarships, honors programs, internships, study abroad opportunities, co-ops, research, leadership programs, special academic opportunities. Those kids get invited into these programs and get paid to attend. Here's what families often miss. Getting into college isn't the finish line. It's the starting line. Because once you're on campus, students aren't all having the same experience. There are students sitting in the back of the lecture hall, and there are students getting the scholarships, the honors invitations, the research opportunities, the internships, the co-ops, the faculty relationships, the special programs, the opportunities that can change what happens after graduation. One student is simply attending college. Another student is being recruited, developed, connected, and invested in. That's a very different college experience. Because right now, most families follow this path. Dream about college. Build a list of schools they've heard of, apply, Wait, get accepted, file the financial forms, wait again, get the financial aid offer, find out whether they can actually afford it. 9 steps before most families finally know the number that should have influenced the first step. And that's backwards. Somewhere along the way, the bumper sticker became step 1. Families are choosing the logo before they understand the purchase. Everyone celebrates the acceptance letter. Nobody posts the loan statement. And once your student decides, this is where I want to go, your leverage changes, because now you're no longer simply evaluating the college, you're trying to figure out how to make the college work. Think about what happens during the application and financial aid process. The college gets your information, your income, your assets, your students' grades, their test scores, their activities, their application, and eventually your financial information. You give them the evidence. But at that point, what do you know about them? What are they likely to award your student? How much merit aid could they offer? Is your student someone they need? Is your student competitive? Are there other schools where your student could potentially receive a stronger offer? Most families don't know. So they're making one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives without knowing where they have leverage. What if you flipped the entire process? Instead of starting with what schools do we like, start with what schools make sense for our student. Start with the data, your student's academic profile, your family's financial position, the schools where your student is competitive, the schools that have historically awarded students like yours. Then build your list. Forward, not backward. You're not hoping a school works. You're identifying where the opportunity is before you apply. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If you put your student in a race against people who are significantly ahead of them, finishing near the back doesn't mean your student isn't capable. It may mean you put them in the wrong race. And that's an important distinction when you're choosing a college, because the goal isn't to put your student in the hardest race they can possibly enter. It's to put them in a race where they can compete, succeed, and finish. Because when the fit isn't right, the consequences can be bigger than a difficult freshman year. The race can take longer. 4 years can become 5. 5 can become 6. And that doesn't just mean more time. It comes with a much bigger sticker price. Another year of tuition, another year of housing, another year of books and fees, and potentially another year of lost income because your student isn't working yet. The biggest mistake isn't simply choosing a school that's expensive. It's choosing a school that's expensive and isn't the right fit for your student. The right college isn't necessarily the one with the biggest name. It's the one where your student can succeed academically, graduate on time, build relationships, gain experience, and where the college sees enough value in them to compete for them. That's where the opportunity is. That's why we believe families should ask a different question. Don't just ask, can my student get into this school? Ask, who will my student be at this school? Will they be fighting to keep up with everyone around them? Or will they be one of the students the college wants to keep? One of the students professors notice? One of the students who gets invited into the honors program? One of the students who gets the internship? One of the students who gets the co-op? One of the students the college is willing to invest in? Because being the big fish in the right pond can create opportunities that simply being admitted doesn't. And sometimes the school where your student is a bigger fish is also the school willing to pay more to get them there. The strategic approach: know your numbers, know your options, know where your student is competitive, know which schools may compete for your student, then apply with a plan. Your student gets to enjoy senior year, and your family isn't waiting until March to discover what you could have known months earlier. You're not guessing anymore. You're working from data. The families who decide on May 1st with multiple offers, multiple financial options, and a real choice didn't necessarily get lucky. They simply started the process with information. They weren't still trying to figure out the game in March. They had already positioned themselves months earlier. Your child deserves to enjoy their senior year, not spend it waiting for a financial aid letter to determine whether their dream school is actually an option. And you deserve to know what you're buying before you buy it. You wouldn't make an offer on a house without knowing the price. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing the payment. Don't send your child to college without understanding yours. At Diversified College Planning, we help families start with the information they need before they apply. Because the goal isn't simply to get your child accepted, it's to find the schools where they can succeed and where the college has a reason to compete for them. Start with the data, build the strategy, be the big fish. Keep the leverage in your hands, not the college's.